Okay, we are live. So for those listening at home, welcome to the Live from the Sword Coast podcast. My name is Kevin Madison, and this will be entry 5 in the 2017 RPG a Day exercise. Today's question, for those who've been following so far, each day we have a question to answer with respect to the role-playing games we're playing or thinking about running or we think about or whatever. Today's question is, to be honest, I thought this would be a boring question, but the more I thought about it, I think this is a very interesting question. So the question for today is let me get it exact here. Which RPG cover best captures the spirit of the game? Now, the reason I thought this was a stupid question, or maybe just not a great question, is because it's so subjective, and there's so many different approaches to designing covers and how you want to display what your game is to other people. But the more I started thinking about it, I thought that I could I could apply some discipline to this question to try and come up with a meaningful answer. So that is beyond just like, boy, I love this, it looks cool. So and I should fess up, I have a social science background, so I tend to think of things in, I'm going to come up with, this is my theory for how I'm going to approach this, and then go from there. So that's what we're going to be indulging in today. So what I'm proposing is the way to answer this question is to think of the covers in, I can think they can be broadly categorized into three different approaches. There is and again, like, this is totally subjective, so I understand that going forward from here, this is going to be biased by my own subjective categorization here, but what are you going to do? You got to start somewhere. So the map I'm proposing is there's three different approaches to designing your covers. There is a design or stylized approach where it's just a really cool looking cover. It doesn't necessarily have any art on it. Let me phrase that. It doesn't have any art depicting characters or situations that may or may not happen in your games. So it's just a stylized cover. So that's the first. There's the design approach. The second approach is what I'm saying is the avatar or adversary approach. In that case, it just shows you really badass looking people, guys and girls who are not necessarily doing anything. They're just looking badass, or adversaries who are just looking real scary. And again, not necessarily doing anything. And the third sort of approach is the exemplar approach, which is going to be showing you what you'll be doing in the game. It shows your characters, getting up to no good, or, saving the world or whatever. But it's showing you the actual action that you may actually see in the game. So those three things, again, are just, there's the design approach, there's the avatar or adversary approach, and there's the exemplar approach. So I've got tons of visual aids now. So I want to show sort of what I was thinking and how I think these things would play out. So let's start with the design approach. I'll start with an older game. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the first edition of this, but this is the 20th anniversary edition of Vampire. And I honestly don't remember when the Ankh started showing up on the Vampire covers, but what I recall is the cover design here, this green marble sort of design, has remained the same since first edition. But on the earlier editions, first edition, you used to have this really cool little rose sitting there, which was a really great contrast color for the green background. It's funny how memory works, because I was thinking about this morning when I was getting ready for making this video, and I thought there was a rose on this. It turns out there's not. So the earlier editions had that. So this one, and I think what's the way you gauge whether the design approach is successful, I think, is whether it draws the eye in. There's something about it that makes you want to look at it, and also how well it expresses sort of in a symbolic or design way what the game's going to be about. To be honest, I think the first edition does a better job of drawing the eye on this. This is just a big mass of one specific color. So so it's still pretty cool, and it's still evocative of the earlier ones. But if I hold this back at a distance, you're maybe gonna have to squint to see what is actually said on it. Whereas that older version with the big red rose on it, it really catches the eye. Another example of, actually in that same vein, White Wolf Studios, the White Wolf Games, I honestly can't remember the specific corporate name, when they were publishing their series of, how did they put it? Adjective the noun, or noun the noun, and they X the Y. So like Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Mage the Ascension, they really favor this kind of approach. Another example of a design one is Werewolf. Now, this is, again, the 20th anniversary edition, but in the first edition, you can see there's these claw marks in here. And then beyond that is this, it's maybe difficult to make out, but it's a picture of this kind of like sylvan glade. In the first edition of this, these were actually tear-outs. So you could pull the cover back and see the full picture of the forest back there, which was pretty neat. I mean, to be honest, these White Wolf starting with this one got a little bit, interested in doing gimmick covers. So this one, and in particular, Wraith the Oblivion first edition, was really great because the cover actually glowed in the dark. Yeah, you could turn all the lights off and hold up the cover, and it had this translucent. It would not translucent. It had this phosphorescent material on it. So this one, again, it's to be honest, whether you can feel the cutouts or whatnot, I don't think makes a big difference. But this gives you, I think, at least some idea of maybe what the game's about, and it does stand out a little bit better than what the other one does because of the different colors. And because I have been watching the most recent season of Turn on Netflix recently, I dug out my copy of Colonial Gothic. Now, this game is, if you're not familiar, is about a kind of like a horror conspiracy kind of thing set during the time of or in and around the Revolutionary War. So what this game's got is the cool, colonial flag up there. It's very hard to see here, but this is the sort of a hermetic kind of serpent crawling its way across the cover. So if you look hard, I think that this could have been a brighter gold to make it stand out a little better. But it still definitely, I think, conveys what time period you're going to be playing in this. So there's that. And then a final example that I really recently received that I really love is a design cover. This is the special edition of the Blades in the Dark role-playing game. And as you can see, there's this cool set of blades that are on there that seem forged in fire and whatever, with a smoky kind of background. Doesn't even have the name of the cover on there. And I really appreciate this cover. This was actually designed by the author, by John Harper. And let me make sure I got his name right. Yep. Okay. So John, and it's cool because he said that after years and years of design, he had never had a chance to just stamp his own look on a product, one that doesn't have to necessarily hit the requirements by the marketing folks. And this was only available through the Kickstarter, so it's not like the people who were getting this knew exactly what they were getting. It didn't need to draw in eyes for anything else. So given that this isn't something that's going to sit on a shelf somewhere, and this is just strictly something that would be a reward for people who are already fans of it, I think this is a pretty cool looking cover. It's something I like showing to friends and stuff like that. But as really great and lovely as this book is, I don't think it doesn't necessarily communicate what this game is necessarily about. If you already are familiar with the game, it's a great little, it's literally blades in the dark. But I don't think that it would necessarily work as a general trade dress, for this game. So that's design. So that's what some examples I can think of when I'm thinking of design. When I'm thinking of Avatar games or adversary games, what I'm thinking of for adversary ones, an easy example is the Pathfinder or Monster Manual. Actually, that's not true, because so the monster manuals, it differs. Some of the monster manuals just have monsters being scary. And some monster manuals have had actual action on them. I'm thinking of the, I don't have a copy of it, but the Monster Manual 2 for AD&D had this great cover where this little dude was fighting a giant, I think like either Firbolg or Verbeeg giant in this forest. And it was really cool. One of my favorite covers from before, and it really showed, what you would do with that book. This is from the most recent bestiary from... maybe it's pronounced bestiary. Anyway, the bestiary for the Pathfinder game. This one features heavily the devils and demons and whatnot, like the phenomenally powerful thing, demonic creatures from the Pathfinder world. So this does a really great job of communicating what the book is going to be about. Also, this illustration here makes me want to use this monster really freaking badly, because it's a really, really cool looking thing. So that's one of the examples I mean of the avatar covers. Another example I can think of an avatar cover is 4th edition D&D Player's Handbook. This is just showing you they're not necessarily doing anything. They're posing, but they're just giving an idea of who you could be in this game. You can be a cool, powerful sorceress, or you could be a real badass fighter, dragonborn, or one of their sidekicks who are just taking up the rear here. So that's what I mean by that. In my memory, I thought there were a lot more examples that I could dig up of just these avatar covers, but they're not. There's really not as many as I thought. A lot more of them go into this exemplar. So let me talk about. Actually, no, I do have one more example. So this is another from the Doctor Who role-playing game. For those who aren't familiar with the game, the sort of default assumption is that you're going to play a game where you're playing the Doctor. Someone's going to play the Doctor, and then you'll play companions that go with him. So this very nicely communicates what this game is going to be, about. There are some design elements in here as well, but I think this really does communicate who you're going to be in the game. So I would put this more as an avatar type cover. In terms of the exemplar covers, I mean, these are probably, I think, the most common the common approach to role-playing game design, and this dates back to forever ago. Examples I can think of here are Pathfinder role-playing game. You are going to be badass heroes fighting badass monsters. That's what this cover is telling me. I really love the layout of this cover. I think I loved it from the get-go. It's Wayne Reynolds who did the art for this, and he does all the art for a lot of the Pathfinder products. I think all the core products are done by him. I understand that his style may not be for everyone, this whole dungeon punk aesthetic, but I really, really love this, and I think that dragon is totally badass. That looks dangerous as hell. So that's one example of an exemplar game. Another example more recently, Shadowrun. Shadowrun this is from the 5th edition. That gives you another good example of who you're going to be and what you're going to be getting up to. These are some badass Shadowrunners who are fighting off some kind of either corporate assets or probably magical threats, because that looks like an insect spirit being summoned up there. So you can be a badass hacker, or a drone rigger, or a street samurai, or physical adept of some kind here, or a spellcaster. This does a really good job of showing you this is what you'll be doing with this game. Shadowrun has been pretty interesting, because in every iteration of the game, from the 1st edition, 2nd edition, 1st and 2nd edition actually had effectively the same art on the cover, just different color. 3, 4, and 5 all have the same approach. It's all exemplar approaches. And actually, I wish I had grabbed my 3rd edition cover, because that is one of my favorite covers. I'm not going to run downstairs and grab it, but I will at the end of the video. I'm going to answer my favorites. That one should have been on my list. The 3rd edition Shadowrun core book cover is awesome. It's so exciting. It's so cool. And yeah. A final example of the exemplar thing is from the most recent version of Traveller. Now, Traveller also, actually, no, Traveller has not always had the same approach. They had a design approach in their earlier editions, but this shows you, I have seen this setup before, of this style of ship being pursued by these two. I think this is a Far Trader, and these are called Corsairs. I'm actually not terribly familiar with the Traveller setting. This is my 1st edition. No, that's not true. I have the Traveller New Era book. But this is one of the first times I've owned the game, so I'm not super familiar with it. But this gives you a really good idea, I think, of what this game is going to be about. You're going to be, travelers and on a ship going around doing stuff, and then getting into trouble. So that's sort of the exemplar covers. In addition to, actually, before I go into sort of what I'm going to call some of the hybrid approaches, I want to talk about, I mentioned that. Shadowrun has always had the same approach. Many D&D products over the years have had the same approach, but I was thinking about it this morning, and it's interesting that D&D made it a conscious change from an exemplar or avatar approach to being a design approach at one point. So the 1st edition cover for the Player's Handbook shows, it's an exemplar cover. It's heroes getting up to, no good. The second edition AD&D cover is likewise. It's exemplar. It's showing you what, I'm trying to think of what was on the cover. Second edition may have been an Avatar cover, actually, now that I think of it. No, it isn't. Second edition is a, well, it might, I don't know. The second edition of AD&D shows a knight, or some kind of fighter riding down a canyon with a big sword up in the air. So it's not really doing anything apart from just riding down. It looks like he's riding into battle, but you can't tell the context. So maybe that was just an Avatar cover. But it's interesting that in third edition, they made a distinctive choice to go away from that and went strictly with the design element, the design aesthetic. Now, I honestly don't know. I've never read any articles about why they made the choice to go this route, but the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, and the DMG for third edition are distinctly this kind of design. These are really trippy, design elements, what just looks like really cool books. At the time, I loved it. I thought it was a really, really great design, and it gave them an aesthetic to follow for other support products. So all the supporting products afterwards follow this design largely, though often they incorporated more art, more illustrative art, I should say, in the middle of the book. So it did give it a good unified design structure. They used color coding to kind of tell you who the books were going to be for. So, brown books were for players, blue books were for DMs, and red books were monster manuals. So that was really cool. I think that was a really clever design aesthetic. Whatever other idea or whatever feelings I may have towards this edition, the design aesthetic on this, by approaching the design and then using hybrid designs on the design approach and then hybrid design approaches on future products, was a really clever way of giving a unified look to the line. And then the fourth edition I talked about before, more of an Avatar cover. Here's the badass guys you're going to play on that. And then fifth edition D&D has gone back to an exemplar cover. I understand that this cover design has, or the cover art at least, has sort of mixed, has had mixed responses. To be honest, I just don't think this is a very pretty cover. I think it's a well executed piece. There's good composition. It's exciting. I don't subjectively like it, and it's not the artist, because I know this artist did a bunch of the covers for, say, the Murder in Baldur's Gate and the Icewind Dale book. There were some adventures that came out while D&D 5th was still in the playtest stage that I believe this artist did the covers for. And those were amazing. They were more Avatar covers where they're just showing some badass heroes, but they were really, really great, really beautiful. So it's not that this is a fall down of this person's technical ability. It's just that I'm not crazy about this, but I understand some folks really love it because it features a signature character from the D&D setting. Interestingly, the fact that they're relying on the history of D&D for these things, and sort of a nostalgic pull for old players, is kind of a design approach similar to what happened in Blades in the Dark, where it's really playing to an existing audience. It's not trying to draw in new. There are definitely elements in this that are trying to draw in a new audience, but the Easter egg in here of this being, I think this is Magni or Agni or something like that. I can't remember what his name is. It's the fire giant guy from King Snurri. He's the fire giant king from the Against the Giants series. And then the Monster Manual features a Beholder from, I think it's Xanthar, maybe. It's anyway, it's a Beholder, which is a signature monster from D&D. And then the DMG features Asarak. I think it's a Lich from Tomb of Horrors, I think. I could be wrong about those. If I'm wrong about those, please correct me in the comments. But anyway, so it's an interesting thing where it's an exemplar style cover or exemplar approach to the cover that also incorporates some Easter egg stuff for existing players. Now, I mentioned a moment ago that there's also what I think are hybrid approaches, and the hybrid approaches are where you're taking elements from different approaches and incorporating them together. So some examples I can think of this. The earliest, an example of and avatar or adversary approach that is merged with a exemplar approach, so like an avatar exemplar hybrid, is from the Pathfinder adventure paths, right? Like these, they picked a very specific design aesthetic early on with these to feature one of the adversaries or allies you'll meet in the course of the adventures, as well as what a scene from the adventure on these covers. And I think these are really effective. I think they're really, it's a great eye-catching design. It gets, you know, I mean, because they've married themselves to these designs for now for like 100 of these adventures at the time of this recording, it does get a little, you know, it does feel a bit rote at this point, where you're seeing the same, you know, conscious design choice of avatar exemplar in it. But taken as a piece individually, they are really, really great. Like, I mean, this really communicates what this is the first adventure from the Strange Aeons adventure path. I think this really helps set the tone for what this game is going to be about, right? The creepy, weird, yellow dressed dude in the foreground, and then this crazy battle with what look like Lovecraftian night gaunts in the background. Helps you tell what that's going to be about. Similarly, this is the first adventure from the Giant Slayer campaign path, or adventure path rather, where there's a great big, I think this is called a cave giant. In the foreground, here's some big bestial, you know, monster, and then some crazy scene in a cavern fighting a giant, what do you call it? Giant skeleton, which and I'm taking it as a giant skeleton just from the way the perspective and the layout is set. So that's a hybrid. The reason I use this one as an example first is because I think that it was followed by some other games quite successfully, like, for instance, the Star Wars games. You know, Star Wars are a very avatar exemplar hybrid here. You know, you're going to play scoundrels and ne'er-do-wells, and you're going to get up to scoundrel and ne'er-do-well stuff. Similarly, on Age of Rebellion, you're going to be rebel heroes. Oh, my dog found her squeaky toy again. You're going to play rebel heroes who are getting up to cool rebel hero stuff, like blowing up the Death Star. A more subtle design and avatar approach is actually found on the Legend of the Five Rings 4th edition cover. So this is the most recent edition of the role-playing game. And so this has got this really cool, just very simple design background with this sword. Legend of the Five Rings is a game set in like kind of a fantasy medieval Japan. I don't know if you can see that there, but there is a samurai lurking in the reflection of that blade. So it's pretty subtle, but I think it's a really beautiful design choice. I think it's really simple. It communicates exactly what this game is going to be about. And I think this, from a distance, really draws the eye in. And then when you notice that there's that person on there, it makes you want to open the book and see what else is in here. It also incorporates the Five Rings design. And this cool kind of, I'm not sure if that's kanji or what on the background as well. This game line followed this game aesthetic with the black covers and whatnot throughout the line. They also used or I believe all of the books also followed a design hybrid. So there's a design exemplar, design avatar sort of approach to it. And this is a change up from the 3rd edition was a design approach as well, but it didn't incorporate the avatar stuff. It was strictly a design approach. The 1st and 2nd edition were exemplar covers. Yeah. So that's a cool hybrid approach. And then a final one I want to talk about in terms of design and an avatar is Mage. So this is from the most recent edition, the 20th anniversary edition, which actually uses effectively the same cover from the first one. And you can see on here there is a little tarot card with a, you know, clearly identifying the Mage. And it's this guy with some cool, you know, magic-looking symbols there. He's doing some magical stuff up here with the sword. And then there's the, I don't know if it's an ankh or it's just a cross. And he's got a cool cyber glove on there too. So it turns out that this is a bit of an inside thing as well, but this character is a character called Dante, and Dante was one of the original playtesters' mages. And the game itself made a conscious decision of including Dante on the cover to do two things: is for one, to have more representative for visible minorities in the game, and two, to shake up the assumptions or the tropes, I guess, that you would expect as well. The game very much prided itself on being a subversive game, both at the time it was released and in the most recent edition. But at the time, when this came out in the 90s, you know, you're not thinking of black guys being hackers, because that's just not the way that the media or the sort of, you know, cultural tropes sort of associated. So that was really a really interesting decision. I think this definitely catches the eye, and it makes you want to see what I think is what's going on in this game. So that's a really interesting way of marrying the design approach with an avatar approach as well. This game line as well has always followed the same purple cover kind of design approach or aesthetic. World of Darkness, I guess, always did that. So the werewolf covers always looked kind of black and orangey, and the vampire covers always had that green marble approach. Wraith had a black and white kind of approach, and Changeling had a more colorful, vibrant, like yellows and reds and blues kind of approach to it. So those are the exemplars of my of what I think are the different approaches. I'm really kicking myself for not including not grabbing a copy of 3rd edition Shadowrun for this, because I do really love that cover. I think about that cover and have gone back and looked at that cover many, many times over the years. So you have to include that in this list. So I wanted to now just show you some of the covers that I think really succeed in getting you interested in the game, but have different approaches. So one of them is Vampire the Dark Ages. Now, this is the 20th anniversary edition of this game, and I can't remember what this is the closest to what the first edition. There have been 3 editions of this game. There was, and they called them slightly different things. There was Vampire the Dark Ages, then there was Dark Ages Vampire, and now we're back to Vampire the Dark Ages. The reason I think this cover is really effective is, one, it really draws the eye in. The medieval style Ankh on here I think is really cool. And if you're aware of the brand, this really suggests this is a suggestive symbol of that line. And I love these roses here because it's a callback to the original edition, and it's a great little burst of color on there, and it's red, so it's, you think of blood or vibrancy and whatnot, and that's what this game is really about. It also matches up very neatly with these cool blood emblems. So as a design approach, I think this is really cool. It's neat too, because on the back you've got some fallen petals and some overgrown leaves there. So this, I think, is suggestive of what it differs in color, obviously, from the green cover we looked at earlier. So it tells you this is from a different, it's not the same game, but it suggests it's similar elements to it. So yeah, so I think that's a really effective cover. In terms of, now this one, I was thinking of it in terms of adversary because I remember it that way, but it's actually an exemplar cover. So this is the 5th edition of Call of Cthulhu. I've loved Call of Cthulhu for years. I mean, to be honest, since this game came out, this was the first edition I actually owned, but I played the previous edition quite a bit before that. For those unfamiliar with Call of Cthulhu, and I'll bet you most people who'll be listening to this are familiar with it, but for the sake of those who may be uninitiated, Call of Cthulhu is really the first horror role-playing game. It's the game that sort of set the horror RPG genre, or subgenre, I should say. And this is the 5th edition of it, and I just I don't think they've done a better job with the covers than this one. And again, taste is all subjective, but this is the Great Cthulhu, a massive Lovecraftian entity from beyond time and space. The game, I should say also, it as a horror game, for those unfamiliar, it's about cosmic horror, not about Gothic cathedrals or like slashers or stuff like that. This is about your characters investigating and encountering unknowable beings from beyond time and space. The horror comes from recognizing the infinitesimally small place that humanity plays in the grander cosmos and the history of that cosmos. This features 2 very unlucky investigators stumbling across what I'm guessing is the Great Cthulhu in the sleeping city of Relay. So that's just great. And I've owned this book twice. I can't remember if I lent out and never got back a version, but I had to pick up a second copy of it. But this is my favorite. When I think of Call of Cthulhu, this is the cover I think of. Not just to downplay since the game, or the covers that have come out since, or the ones that came before. This just happens to be my favorite look at it. Another old-time one, and this one I think is, it's more of an exemplar cover, but there's a bit of an aspirational, there's a bit of a design approach to it as well. This is the 3rd edition of ARS Magica. I want to talk about ARS Magica a little later this month, but this cover, I think, is just so great at expressing exactly what you're doing in this game. You know, you are, the game, for those unfamiliar, it's set in medieval Europe, about 13th century, early 13th century. What you're playing is the group is going to be playing a covenant of mages, and mages in this game are phenomenally powerful, way more powerful than any other character type. So everyone makes a mage, and they're going to have their own mage. In addition to that, everyone will make up a companion character. This is the default way the game is played, I should say. So everyone has a companion character, and that companion character is the non-mage, but it's sort of like a PC level. It's a fairly capable, you know, person. And then the covenant will also be made up of what are called grogs, and grogs are sort of like, you know, less powerful or less influential NPCs, but they fill important roles in the covenant, and they're also shared characters. So each individual adventurer will be one person playing their mage, everyone else playing their companion, and then everyone sort of sharing the NPCs. I think this shows what that game, it doesn't show you the grogs and whatnot, I guess, as well too, but it shows you the power level of the mages you're dealing with. It shows you the threats you'll face with this burned pentagram in this fallen dude's chest, and then it shows you some kind of demonic hands coming at this magus. I dig that there is also this massive thunderstorm that is being called in over an otherwise clear and bright sky, which is again suggestive of just how powerful this mage is. And then there's just the very cool medieval tome design elements to this as well. So this game came out in the, I can't remember if it's the late 80s or early 90s, one or the other, but it's a cover that has stuck with me. I have purchased the most recent version of ARS Magica and some of the other things, some of the other supplements for that version. And it's a great, to be honest, I think it's probably a better holistic game than this one, but because this cover is so badass, this is what I think of when I think of ARS Magica. And the newest version is very neat and whatnot, but I don't think it holds up to this. And let's see here, next one, and this is another example of an exemplar. I only have 2 more left, so bear with me. This is an example of another exemplar cover, and this is from a more recent game. This is the Iron Kingdoms Unleashed cover. Now, this is the second role-playing game released in the Iron Kingdoms RPG line. The first one was a great cover. It looked really cool, but it's really more of an avatar cover than it is an exemplar cover. It showed a bunch of, you know, badass heroes kind of standing around a dock. And that was cool. It was well executed. It's really beautiful art. It's just that it isn't as dynamic and as exciting as this. Like, this cover is just bonkers. In this game, you're not playing humans and dwarves and so forth. You're playing, like, effectively the monstrous races. You're playing Gatormen, or you're playing bog trogs, or you're playing these feral humans called Tharns, or you're playing Trollkin, or that actually might be one of the smaller ones, which the name of it I can't remember. But anyway, this, I think, shows you the kind of like gonzo bonkers adventures you could have with this game. You know, it's this group of varied monsters that has broken into a tavern of some kind, looks like a waterfront tavern, and everyone's, you know, responding appropriately. This lady's freaking out. This guy's trying to kill these guys. This guy doesn't really care one way or the other. So this game, just because you know, you're playing such monstrous characters, which can include, you know, necromancers and you know, man-eating monsters like the Gatormen. I think it's supposed to be played in the same way that older versions of the Warhammer fantasy role-playing are to be played, which is to say that it's sort of firmly with tongue-in-cheek in some cases. And this really conveys that in a really, really good way. Plus, it's just a beautiful piece of art. And actually on the back too, because there's a funny little, there's someone else who's sneaking in, blade in teeth. Like it does a really, really good job of, I think, showing you what the game's going to be about and getting excited for playing in that, you know, in that setting. The final products I'll talk about There's actually 6 of them because it's part of an adventure path. And these are some of Pathfinder's more recent hybrid approaches where they're doing an avatar and exemplar approach. And this is from an adventure path called the Iron Gods. This is hands down my favorite of the adventure paths that Paizo has released, and to the point where actually, like, I converted everything on my blog. I converted everything from this adventure to 5th edition D&D so I could run it with that. And when I say everything, I mean everything: monsters, magic items, technological rules, races, everything. And these covers are terrific. I love the more drab colors, like the smoky grays on the background. The characters are so unique. They do a good job on these covers for the most part of having interesting looking characters. But like, this is an android character from the setting, which is just great. Like, this is not something you've seen on another similar product before. That's a fantasy role playing game. She's got this cool ray gun there, and then there's everyone in the background here our heroes breaking into this. I think it's an alchemy lab. No, it's breaking into you can see in the background there's some. It is a lab, but it is a high-tech lab. So you can see the kind of high technology design in the back there. So really interesting first kick at it. Cover number 2, they dial up the Wahoo on this, and check it out. You got a half-orc character with a giant chain axe or a chain sword. So it's basically in the game or in the adventure you find out it's actually a tool this person has repurposed, but that tells you everything you need to know about this adventure and this adventure path too. And in here we see that our heroes are beginning to pick up some of the technological items, which again is suggestive of what you're going to be doing. It's a great exemplar cover where you're seeing what's going to happen to your characters. You're going to start getting more badass high-tech stuff as you play through this adventure. The follow-up one. Now we're actually featuring robots on the cover. So when we see our hero, the Barbarian, Amiri, has actually got a copy, or she's obtained that badass chainsword now. They're fighting some kind of weird, robot golem thing here too. And our villain on here is this. He's a. I don't want to spoil for those who may play this. I won't spoil it, but the character's name is Furcus Shud, and it's one of the most bonkers ideas for NPCs that I've heard of. It's just awesome. But that also is really great looking. He looks like a ghost kind of thing, but really exciting. And it's a villain that you would remember. The next one in the series is Valley of the Brain Collectors, and you've got this again, like this crazy alien looking character who's, I think he's a Lashuta. No, I got that wrong. Maybe someone I'm sure in the comments can assist with this, but Kasatha, that's what he is. He's a Kasatha race. And then you got this brain collector. It's an old D&D monster from the basic edition, actually, also called a Nethalgu, I believe, which literally collects your brains. Because Pathfinder didn't, or I should say back up, because Pathfinder is obviously based on the open game setting, but TSR, or Wizards of the Coast rather, didn't release certain specific monsters, certain proprietary monsters like beholders or mind flayers. They don't feature in the open game license book, so that means that Pathfinder can't use them. So in place of the mind flayers, which are a creepy brain sucking race, they went with the Nethalgu instead, which to be honest are way fucking scarier because they're giant and armored and chitinous and whatnot. Plus they've got some cool powers, and they'll steal your brain and pop it in their little brain casings there, which will actually increase their power. So this again shows you just how scary and terrifying it is, and it really delivers on the advertised Valley of the Brain Collectors. The penultimate adventure is Palace of Fallen Stars, and what you're seeing here is this is the guy who Kevilkoth, what's his name? I don't remember. He is the ruler, the Black Sovereign, who runs Numeria, the nation where this whole adventure path takes place. And we've thrown all pretense of hiding the high-tech elements to the wind here, and we've got this giant, I think it's called a Myrmidon robot facing off against our heroes, who again, you see someone's upgraded to a high-tech rifle here now. And it shows really a super badass Conan analog character here if Conan the King went bad. This particular character drinks all sort of weird high-tech fluids that are provided to him by this group called the Technic League, and we see him doing just that in this cover here. So I think it does a really, really great job of conveying both who you're going to be facing and what you're going to be doing in that adventure. And the final one in this is the Divinity Drive. And this is, again, like unlike anything else I've seen on Pathfinder covers. We've got this very high-tech kind of setting here with planets in the background, with this massive, weird-looking dragon, you know, breathing fire down on our characters, and this totally unusual alien-looking robot who is the main adversary, who will be the you know, the main adversary in this adventure, and to wrap up the adventure path. And again, I'm not going to spoil who that is or what's going on in here, but I think it's a really it does a really good job of getting you excited about who's in there, and excited about what you're going to be doing. And I should say too, like I am viewing these from a DM's perspective. I mean, I'm the person who's, I've read through all these adventures multiple times. I have yet to actually run them, so they're kind of my white whale of gaming, or one of my white whales of gaming. But every time I look at these, it gets me excited about this adventure path again. It reminds me of the really great and unique stuff that I found in this adventure path, which is exactly what you want your products to do. Whoever the target market is for them, whether it's the players or the DMs, you want you want the people to get excited to use what's in there. It's not just to sell the product; it's also to get them excited about using the product. Because unlike other, you know, to a degree, when you pick up a book, you pick up a comic or something like that, you're going to want to a degree, you want to make sure that it gets the consumer interested in going back to the producer and see what else they've got to provide. Gaming is a little different than that, because you're bringing, you know, you're not just hitting one person, you're hitting everyone at a table in the same way too. And also, if you're playing in a traditional way, this is the stuff that's going to be sitting around your game table too, that, you know, nosy players will thumb through. I mean, hopefully not the adventures, but yeah. So of the in terms of answering the question, you know, what do I think captures the spirit? I think that those last batch of the ones that I mentioned are the ones that I think do it best. But if I had to pick one line, it would be this. I think the Iron Gods Adventure Path, I think, for me, does the best job of conveying the spirit of what's in there and what you're supposed to do with those books. So I honestly didn't have that adventure, or that answer in mind. I thought I was just going to go with a bunch of them, but having thought through this now, I think I'm quite confident I can go with just those products. So anyway, so that's my my answer to today's question. It's a lot longer than I had anticipated that answer being, but I've never been accused of being short of words, so, or you know, not long-winded enough. So so yeah, if you have any questions or comments about my choices I picked here, or if you have any choices of your own, I'd be interested in hearing about them, because you know, I mentioned in the video yesterday that, you know, one of the ways you find out about new games is you know, through a lot of social media stuff. I actually forgot to include that back and forth from people on the channel has helped bring me into other games as well too. Either today or tomorrow, I'm heading down to my friendly local gaming store to pick up All for One Regime Diabolique, because I've had some people who I've been corresponding with about this this exercise has recommended that to me. So that's another way that I've stumbled across stuff. So I appreciate that. Anyway, tomorrow the question shall be: you can game every day for a week. Describe what you do. Oh boy. So I imagine that's not going to be a short answer either. So hopefully you've been enjoying these answers, because tomorrow will be a probably long one as well. If you are watching this either live, or you're watching this around the time when this is being posted, I hope you're having a terrific weekend. Otherwise, I hope to see you again tomorrow for tomorrow's answer. So see ya.